What's up, guys? Welcome back to the THPstrength podcast. My name is John Evans. I am the coach of roughly 500 to 800 different athletes at any given point. I'm the head performance coach. I've helped Isaiah go from roughly a 43-inch vertical to 50.5. I've helped Austin go from about 41 to 47. Are you at this point?
It was lower. I think it was 39.
39. And I've actually helped probably 30 to 40 other pro dunkers improve their vertical and get healthier, along with thousands of other athletes improve their tendon health as well as back health and their athletic performance. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about deloads and how to quickly improve your vertical after you've been training for a period of time. If you do this correctly, you should be able to improve your vertical roughly 2 to 3 inches with about 2 to 4 weeks of not training, I guess is the right way to say it.
But before we get into it, I want to give a quick word from our sponsors over at THPstrength.com. They were gracious enough to put a sponsorship into this video.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
If you are looking for jump training, it is the best jump training on the planet. And they also can get your knees healthy if you deal with any kind of tendinopathy anywhere in your body. So if you're interested in that, go to THPstrength.com.
Hey, Isaiah.
What's up, Austin?
We should give them a discount.
No way.
I think that's the best thing to do. If you've been sitting around on the couch too long, getting really deep into Red Dead Redemption and played over 2,000 hours, now is your time to sign up for THP. Use code THP at checkout for 10% off your first month. It's going to be the best decision ever, and you'll get off the couch.
How many hours of Red Dead Redemption have you played?
Around 300.
I thought you were going to say 3,000. I was like, oh my God.
What's cool is dunking fits really well with gaming if you want to do both at the same time.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. So let's go with our experiences with a deload. Actually, even before we do that, we should probably explain what it is. So basically, you want to drop your volume or intensity by roughly 20%. Typically, it's during the 4th week of a training cycle, and this functions to help the body recover and kind of set in some of the physiological adaptations and let your performance or your preparedness come up as a result of fatigue coming down and also your fitness climbing up. If you go too long without a deload, you'll have a couple things happen. One is something called monotonous overtraining, which is where you do the same thing too long and you're basically not allowing your body to recover, and it becomes so well adapted to the stimulus that the stimulus doesn't allow for overload or adaptation. Another issue is you can overtrain. So that's basically where you go the other direction and you're training so hard that your body cannot recover. And that can lead to a lot of sicknesses. It can lead to drop in your HRV score, which is like a measure of your parasympathetic nervous system. You can see your resting heart rate climb up as a result. A lot of weird central nervous system stuff starts to happen. You can look into that. That maybe might be another topic for another time. But the deload helps mitigate the onset of overtraining, and it can also allow you to feel a little bit better about your training because it's hard to go through long periods of arduous training without seeing much of a return on your investment. A lot of people have a hard time with that. So typically that's only a week, but you can extend that deload out and more or less do a taper or peaking. So I typically just call it unloading. I don't really call it like peaking or whatever else because to me it's just loading and unloading, right? You load for a period of time, you unload for a period of time. Different people have different responses to it, so we'll go through our experiences with unloading for you, what you've seen work, what you've seen not work, and then Austin, you can go through yours. I'm gonna grab my coffee.
Okay.
My deloads are pretty freaking dialed in at this point. It's been about 5 years of this style of THP jump training, and at this point, it's almost guaranteed that if I train really hard for 3 to 4 weeks and then back off hard for 1 to 2 weeks, that I will have an outlier top 1% of jumping performance. And then depending on the style of training, I will see more or less results from that deload. So generally when I do a lot of like high volume work, a lot of max strength work, and I push it really freaking hard, and I see a noticeable decrease, namely in my power clean. That's usually where I see a big decrease in my performance, as far as like my rate of force development. I know if I unload, I'm gonna have a really good jumping day, relative to my baseline level of performance. That pretty much sums up my.
How long did you say how long?
Yeah. Usually a week. I usually load for 3 weeks and then unload for 1 week.
What if it's all-time best jumping?
Mm,
You still like 7 days?
yeah, generally. Sometimes usually it's not enough if I push intensity too much during that deload week. And that'll only happen when I'm like trying to max my lifts during deload week. So if I like max squat, or if I am trying to max my power clean and I do too many attempts at a maximal weight, I won't see as good of a deload. But if I keep intensity high, just not hitting failure, so if I'm like 90% around there for a single, that's usually when I see an effective deload. There have been times where I'll deload. I almost always jump better compared to the third week of loading, but sometimes we'll extend the deload out a little bit, and I jump better at like week 2 or week 3. But at that point, it's more of a taper. Where I saw that was right before I tested 50.5, so that was, I think, February or early March. We had deloaded for a competition early February, so that was a 1 week deload. Did the show. This was the All-Star weekend. Jumped well, but I was still pretty fatigued. Like I jumped really, really well there, but I think my power clean numbers were down. So I unloaded, and my power clean was still like 20 pounds lower than my all-time max, which is usually a sign that I'm still not like fully recovered. And then we did basically, I think, 2 weeks of building up my power clean, still unloading in the weight room. And then every week my power clean climbed up until I matched my PR, or close to my PR. I power clean 300 plus. And then 2 days later, I hit my all-time best jumping day. And then I think I had done a lot of like.
So you hit that 300 and then you hit 50.5 the second time?
2 days later, yeah.
That's actually really interesting.
Yeah.
I did not expect that. Because you've done that before and gone the other direction.
I think that's why, because we've written down my plan basically for dunk camp. If you guys don't know what dunk camp is, a camp that we hold every single summer. And for
not
guys,
us, but
not us, but
it exists every summer.
Yeah, and that's basically what we train for, because we always test my vertical at dunk camp. So after I tested the 50.5, we basically wrote out a 3-month plan on how to beat that at dunk camp this summer. And one of the notes we put in there was build my, I think, functional overreach, which is basically just jump a lot, then unload and get my power clean up before dunk. I think it was because of that.
Yeah. So the biggest thing we noticed with it was that jumping helped a lot. And so we wanted to, in terms of a functional overreach could be anything, but we're going to do a very short period of intense higher volume jumping that is basically at the capacity of what he can handle. And then we're going to back off all the jumping and then go and see how he does. And usually he responds really well to that. So one thing I wanted to clear up, difference between a deload and a taper. Taper in research is usually 7 to 14 days. Deload is usually only a 20% drop in volume and intensity. A taper, you would see a 50% drop in volume and you would keep intensity very high. When I do deloads with these guys, I generally let them tell me how they feel, and then I kind of guide the session. Like if they feel really good and they want to max and I'm 5 or 6 days out from when they were supposed to jump, I'm fine with that. But if it's really close to the session, I don't usually like to push volume, definitely not volume, with intensity. But even intensity, I like to stay away from. For jumping athletes, I found that the traditional research of like keep intensity really high and drop volume really intensely doesn't work too much. A lot of the guys that I work with like to have a little bit of hypertrophy work in there and actually don't like intensity too high, similar to weightlifters. Only weightlifters are very similar. They don't like to max too close to competition because it can fatigue them for too long. That was something that Vance Newgard, one of my Olympic weightlifting mentors, taught me, and I found that to be the case. Like, if he goes really heavy in back squat or really heavy in front squat or power clean, if he does too much intensity for too long, too close to a session, it's not going to go well. And even when we've been in competitive periods and it's been a prolonged kind of unloading with jumping and trying to maintain performance, we don't have too much intensity with volume. Definitely not close to competition. So just wanted to clear that up. And Austin, go ahead, share your experience.
Yeah, my experience is very similar to Isaiah's. I do notice that I tend to get more fatigued than Isaiah does, and I typically need a little bit longer of a deload, closer to 2 weeks.
Built different.
Yeah, he is. He is built different.
He's a 2-foot jumper.
I mean, even with my 2 foot, I get more fatigued than most, it seems. But yeah, typically to jump my best, it's around the same process for Isaiah. But yeah, I do notice fatigue immediately. For me, it's more just so like I don't want to even lift. Like it's like I sleep extra. Like I sleep like 12 hours a night around week 3 of every cycle, and I do not want to come train. And my lifts go down a lot, right? Like I would say my lifts I feel like you don't have as much of a decrease as I do, Zay, personally. Like I'll get like a 50-pound decrease in
like lifts?
Yeah, like mine just drops. My vert shoots down like 10 inches too. It's crazy.
I see a lot of decrease personally in my clean. My clean dropped 50 pounds this last cycle, but generally my strength, like max strength work, takes longer to decrease, which falls in line with research.
All right. So I guess this brings up maybe the next question is, how do you do this correctly? How do you know if you're unloaded or deloaded or whatever, right? A lot of the times when we work with athletes, we see them jump way higher after they hop off our training. I've said this before, the reason why is because they basically do a deload. They do an unload or they do a taper. They went from training at 100% of the volume to training to 10% of the volume, just jumping once a week. That'll work for a little while, and then typically they fall off really quickly. And the reason why is because you don't have... you can't maintain your fitness very well if you're not doing power work or strength work. You're going to fall off in those capacities, and then that's going to make your output in terms of your performance go down, especially in something that's so force dependent like jumping. That said, if you're kind of wondering like, oh, should I back off or should I not? I would say if your vertical has been depressed for a period of time, meaning it's down anywhere from 2 to 6 inches, you probably do need a period of unloading. I have been working it more frequently into our athletes' trainings because I feel like it increases compliance and buy-in and can kind of help guys long term with motivation.
No, I was just saying that's a huge reason for that. I think a lot of times athletes on our training used to get very demotivated because the training's really freaking hard. So we started implementing like every 3-4 months. We put them on something called the John Evans Special, which was created by John. He used it to he wanted a period of basically, it was like three months around there where he wanted to maintain vertical, and he was really fatigued. And we started loading that cycle up for athletes and telling them basically you do one hard workout Monday, do the same workout Wednesday, but back off a lot. And then sessions every Friday, and you can kind of maintain your vertical there. And if you've been training really hard for 3 months, you'll usually see your vertical increase every week of that cycle. And it's been the cycle where a lot of our athletes have jumped their highest.
Like Nathan had some of the freakiest performances ever on that. And what's interesting too is like when you hit that new ceiling, you kind of understand what that movement pattern or motor pattern feels like, and that long-term helps guys improve. It's almost like they understand what it's like to hit that next gear, and they're like, oh, that's what that's like, that's what that feels like, and they can get back to that even in the subsequent cycle. So I like to unload guys, and some guys are like, well, should I unload at all, or like, is there a benefit long-term or whatever else? I do think long-term it can help when you do hit those new performances, like those new peaks, because the basement typically comes up too.
Yeah.
And once you've been there before, it's easier to get back, whereas if you've never been there, it's kind of like, oh, I don't know what that feels like. And sometimes that's really, really helpful. So if you're one of our athletes and you're wondering that and you're like, I've been loading for 3 or so months, then it might be time to unload. It might be time to kind of freshen up and allow yourself to perform well. I know in high school it took me probably 2 months to fully freshen up, and then I PR'd my high jump by 4 inches by doing that. And then I've seen it happen in dunking. I unloaded for 6 to 8 weeks. That's beyond a taper. That's like almost a John Evans special. You just week to week, you just get a little better, a little better, a little better. And I've seen it work incredibly, incredibly well for guys.
Yeah, you just have to be really wary when you're doing that, because there does come a point where your performance starts decreasing. That's where you have to. I mean, the whole point of training is to spur on adaptation, and the volumes and intensity is there. Eventually, get to the point where they're not enough, and your performance just starts going.
We've seen
like that
happen to Travis. I've seen it happen to myself.
I've done it too before.
Yeah. And it's like your dunk skill typically gets better. Like even in high jump, maybe your technique gets better. High jump's interesting because if your preparedness goes down, you're typically going to jump worse. Technically, like they match each other. The more fit you are, the better your technique looks. You'll have more rotation because your ground reaction force is higher and your rate of force development's better, and so you'll have more rotation. In dunking, you can jump lower and still hit more difficult dunks because you don't have to worry about that as much. Where in track, you'll see other things kind of fall off as a result. Like fitness typically follows your form in terms of that sport. Dunking, again, that's not the case. So
how, I guess you actually kind of covered it, but I guess we can go over it one more time. How exactly do you deload?
So what I would do for guys is I would have them figure out what they were doing previously. I would cut the sets in half, typically, and I only like high intensity like 5 to 7 days out from their jump day. When you're like 2 to 3 days out, you got to drop everything back by definitely volume by 50%. Intensity can stay high typically in the power movement, in which almost all of our guys have some sort of a power movement. 3 to 5 days out, or probably 2 days out, they'll have a power movement. So I'll keep that in there, and then the strength work all falls off. Your metrics typically go like this in terms of fatigue, like what fatigues first to last. The really sensitive ones are like sprinting, RSI, which is reactive strength index, like a repeat hop. What else will fall? Single leg jumping. That stuff will fall off first. And then the next thing that falls off is your power output. So you'll see like typically speed strength. So moving a relatively lighter object really fast, like a light barbell in a power snatch, you'll see wattages fall off. You'll see peak bar velocities fall off. Then you're going to see strength speed, which is like heavy power cleans. That's the next metric to go. And then the next one is typically your strength. So if your strength is down, you're very fatigued. The other ones will typically come up pretty quick if you're fit. Like if Isaiah's down, I'm not worried about it. If Austin start to fall off, I'm a little bit more concerned because he doesn't have as many years of training built up. His physiology, when it drops off like that, that's a sign he's pretty far in the hole, and it takes a while for him to come back out of that. Sometimes it's just detraining, but if he's been training, I know that it's fatigue, right? And that's it.
I just had such a funny image in my head. Like I wish we had an animator. I just imagined Austin like in a hole, like screaming for help, and then a guy with a strong arm, like, and his name is D-Load, and he's like, and like you guys clap and he brings you up. Yeah.
It reminds me of like an old political cartoon. Like,
Like political satire. Yeah, Uncle Sam, Rosie the River.
You're like falling into an abyss.
Yeah, that's me, and I'm just digging the hole deeper.
Yeah. I literally pictured you like looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger, like D-Lo. Just picks him up.
Snatching him.
Disregarded dumbbells and plates at the bottom. I'm like,
just throwing more weight on top of him. So yeah, if you're seeing that, you typically need to back off. And honestly, you only need like 1 or 2 days a week of lifting in general during an unload. One is like probably a little too, like that's too little. You need a little bit more than that. 1 hard day, 1 easy day is really all you need in a week, and then you'll start to recover, or you should. Now, if you're really just not trained well, that might even be too much.
I have so much adrenaline right now.
Why? You want to dunk?
I don't, bro. I literally, my veins are like.
You're ready to train?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I feel like that's a good place to stop. If you guys, I'm dunking today. If you guys want to jump higher and want to be a part of our cohort of freak athletes, you want to be a better athlete, you want to get leaner, you want to get stronger, more powerful, and be a part of the community, go to THPstrength.com and use code THP at checkout for a 10% discount off your first month. If you're wary. And that said, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and if you're on a podcast or streaming platform, make sure you give us 5 stars and leave a comment. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you tomorrow.